Man, wow, an underwater pyramid found in the Azores. What a monster find this is, Steve.
Well, it's not the first one they found on the ocean floor, that's for a fact.
Yeah, I mean, we have this Cuban pyramid, and again, the research seems to have gone very, very silent on that, but this is a real little hot toddy, this one. I mean, when you go, I'll provide the links in the YouTube description for everybody to check this out, obviously, and, when you look at the sonar imaging of this, it's very, very clear. Undoubtedly, this is a pyramid. You can see the steps on it. You can see the base. Let's just say, I mean, they've discovered this. It's an underwater pyramid, guaranteed. It's 60 meters high. That's 200 feet high. And it's got an 8,000 meter square base. It's a monster pyramid, Steve. It's a big one.
So 8 kilometers is 5 miles.
Yeah, so 5 square mile base, like. That's a big pyramid, Steve. That's a big pyramid.
I know city's smaller than that.
Here's the thing, to discuss this now, but this is in serious, this is now starting to really cast doubt into our past of what really went on. I mean, again, do we say the word Atlantis? They ridicule the idea of Atlantis. Ignatius Donnelly was the first one to reignite the research into Atlantis in the late 1800s, and the thing is, we have now got other stuff in the Azores Plateau, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, but when we have this pyramid now, we have the Cuban pyramid as well, which, by the way, is so far down, it has to be subsidence that put it down there. It wasn't literally that the sea levels were lower. So something's very happened in our past. I mean, actually, I know that I recall, Steve, there was a underwater sunken circle off the coast of the Orkneys as well. That's something like 15 meters down, so I mean, we were down lower at one point, whether that was sea levels or subsidence, but something happened to this planet a long time ago, Steve, and if that pyramid now, that's another one, Steve. I mean, what's going on with these pyramids, Stephen?
I think that we're not really being told the whole truth.
Yeah.
I'm sure for a fact that these nuclear submarines that have been floating around the Atlantic and the Pacific for the best part of 40 or 50 years have been taking sonar readings as well. So what they've got that they're not sharing with us is very interesting,
And a very valid point, Stephen. You telling me that these American submarines, weren't around the base of Cuba, the bottom of Cuba, around the oceans around there? I mean, they had to have known about that Cuban pyramid. If they didn't, it would be rare that they did not know about that, But I think this is all, it's hidden in military records, but undoubtedly, those submarines have been everywhere on this planet, Steve.
And also, on top of that, they've probably been recording the actual bottom of the sea for topographical information the same way as an ordnance survey map covers land.
Yeah, and I reckon they have it all. I reckon they have it mapped, most of it. I mean, they're going to do that while they're not at war, Stephen. This is what we're trying to bring out on the Hope and Swagger discussions, and this is a real hot toddy, this one, Stephen, because the beauty about this is, the Azores, by the way, is off the west coast of Spain, in towards the Atlantic, heading out towards the middle of it. Of course, off the west coast of Africa, you have the Canary Islands, and in between the Azores Islands and the Tenerife Islands, there's another underwater structure called on the Azores Plateau. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I mean, this region just off the west coast of Spain and Africa, you have these groups of islands, these archipelagic islands, and the Canary Islands, and especially Tenerife. I mean, there's step pyramids on Tenerife. Now, they don't look very impressive, Stephen, but you show me a photo. What you look like, and I agree, it looks like a mountain that is actually a pyramid that's been covered with pyroclastic flow.
Well, if you look at the pyramids that they've got in Bosnia, dated roughly 10,000 years old, if you believe what we're being told.
Yeah.
What's to say that there wasn't something 12,000 years old built somewhere else in an area that's now subsided or submerged under a lot of water?
I know, and the thing is, I mean, I will say the pyramids that are on Tenerife today don't look impressive as in respect to other pyramids that we have on the planet. They're made out of smaller stones, they're stepped. They look like survivors of pyramid builders that tried to start again without all the masons there to do it all. Just they threw something up together. They were the descendants of original pyramid builders who'd lost their original knowledge, put it like that. I should just say, at this point that pyramid building is a global phenomenon. All around the planet we have pyramid building. But here's the kicker, Steve, yeah? From what I see, you got them in Central America, Chile, Peru, China, Siberia, the Canary Islands, as we just mentioned, Egypt, obviously, and Mexico, also famous for it. But I mean, where you find pyramid building, you also find mummification. And where you find either pyramid building or mummification, you find this weird process called cranial deformation, where they bind the skull. And sometimes you even find all three in the one locale. Strange practices associated with pyramid building. So, for example, Central America, you find cranial deformation, mummification, and pyramid construction. Chile, you don't find any pyramid construction, but you do find mummification and the head binding. Peru, you find all three. China, you find mummification and pyramid building. You know, Siberia, you find cranial deformation and you find mummification, but you don't find the pyramids. But maybe there is a pyramid there, we just haven't found it yet. Like you say, these things could be covered, and it goes on and on. And in the Canary Islands, they have mummification and they have pyramid building. Now, the Canary Islands is a long way from the Azores, but not when you look in the grand scheme of things. They're all islands off the west coast of Spain and France, or Spain and Africa, like, you know. But I just think this whole thing is fascinating. I just wanted to give the global perspective on this pyramid frenzy that was on our planet at one time, Stephen. And I just think now, right smack bang in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, we have another one. This is big time, Stephen. This is a big story, like, I mean, because Cuba, the one in Cuba, when the news broke on that, Stephen, it was like, you know, great, yeah, okay, it was a bit of an anomaly and nobody's really heard much about it since, but now we have two, Stephen. That's big.
That was a different type of pyramid, though, wasn't it? That was a crystal pyramid.
No, you're talking about another one in the Bermuda, Stephen. I'm talking about one off the coast of Cuba. The one off the coast of Cuba is so far down that the sea level was never that low. Even if you froze all the ocean levels, like, you know, to get it down that low, you couldn't get it down that low to get the pyramid above sea level. So it had to have been subsidence that got it down that low. Now, the one that you're talking about is in around the Bahamas, I think. They talk about, now that really lends credence to that story too, Stephen, because that's not just, you know, they talk about the tip of a crystal pyramid is sticking out of the ocean in the Bahamas, like, in around Bermuda somewhere, inside the Bermuda Triangle. And they reckon that could be the source of the weird anomalies. A lot of people are speculating that that's the source of the weird anomalies of events that happens in the Bermuda Triangle. It's due to this crystal pyramid. Setting that aside, yes, that is another one, Stephen. So it looks like now we have a really big monster pyramid in the Azores, like. I'd love to see the coordinates of it, because all we have is a sonar imaging at the moment. Because let's talk about, like, you know, there's geological evidence as well, Stephen, as you brought up to my attention as well, about this large landslide in Tenerife as well. We have a subsidence story here. This pyramid that we're talking about in the Azores, this newly discovered one, its story's only broke on this, by the way, guys. It's not that far down, Stephen. It's something like 40 meters. That's not a lot. That's about like 120 something feet, like. That's not.
Yeah, I mean, that's within sort of scuba diving. Well, not scuba diving, but I mean, a decent diver could possibly be able to reach that with just basic equipment.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, wow, the Portuguese Navy are on this now. I have to say, in the article that's been released, the Portuguese Navy are jumping on board with this. I'd say they're going down to have a look at that thing. You know,
well, if you take the example of Lake Toba in Indonesia, it's an old volcanic island that's got a lake around it that's about 450 meters deep. That used to be open to the sea, but at some point during their history, the area that was open to the sea closed up. And now you've got all sorts of animals that have converted from seawater to freshwater. So there is evidence on the actual surface of the Earth that there's been significant changes happening between landlocked areas and areas that were open to the sea. Now, looking at that whole area between the Azores, Madeira, the Canary Islands, it does look like there was the potential for it to be an open sea area, but with plains and plateaus that may have been above it, and at some point there's been some sort of catastrophe or some change in the Earth's surface that has risen the sea levels or the the land subsided. I mean, we don't really know what's in the centre of the Earth because they keep drilling down and drilling down, but they can't seem to puncture through the crust into the core itself.
Yeah.
So we don't actually know what's inside the Earth.
I'm going back to the. Sorry, Stephen. I'm going to go back to the middle of the Atlantic, this mid-Atlantic ridge, because this big giant crack. If you look on Google Earth, you'll see a giant crack running through from Iceland all the way down to the west coast of South America. This like hairline fracture in the Earth, and it's like they call it the mid-Atlantic ridge, obviously, and it's this big deep crack. And Ignatius Donnelly, when he wrote his book Atlantis in the 1880s, I think it was, in his first edition, he talked about this, that he used geological evidence, and he was ridiculed for it, by the way. He was a pioneer, the last book about Atlantis was when the Greeks wrote about it, he revived the whole thing again. Now there's more books wrote about Atlantis than anything else, excluding the Bible. The thing is, Stephen, it's like, by looking at other structures, this isn't the first structure in the Azores Plateau.
No.
No, and we just discussed the other structure, Stephen. This is insane. The other one is like mind-boggling. It's when you pull it up on Google Earth, Stephen, it's like this in between the Azores and Tenerife, and this is the key thing. We have halfway between the Azores and the Canary Islands, we have this grid-like city pattern. 100 miles wide by about 80 miles, 100 miles wide as well, in a square. It's like a square grid-like pattern of roads and networks or something like that. Perhaps you want to comment on that, Steve?
Yeah, just to make it easy for people to find it, if you're looking on Google Earth, there's a underwater plateau called the Cruiser Table Mount. And just to the right-hand side of that, at coordinates 3125, 17.51 north, 2415, 28.32 west.
I'll put that in
very large.
Yeah, I'll put that in the YouTube description as well, Steve, for people to check.
It's a very large, clearly defined square pattern on the surface underneath the ocean floor.
Yeah, it's man-made. It looks man-made, Stephen.
Since when has nature built in straight lines?
Yeah, but here's the thing. Just underneath that, Stephen, I'll do a little Google Earth video clip for this, but it looks like a giant triangle in the middle of the ocean floor. There's a big long line running just underneath the grid-like pattern, and then when you zoom in at the right distance, you can see it looks like a 3, 4, 5 triangle.
We're talking 500 miles long.
Yeah, 500 miles long, then it just borders on the edge of to the left of the Tenerife Islands. Whatever you say about the triangle, there is some weird. This has been rolled out before anyway. This isn't new. This grid-like pattern, but it's just so funny that we've got more stuff now. It's right slap bang in between the Azores and Tenerife. You got an underwater pyramid on the Azores, and you've got pyramids on Tenerife. I think that the people that landed on the highlands of Tenerife, these mountain peaks that are sticking out of the ocean, these volcanic peaks that are sticking up, I think they just went for higher ground and set up camp again, and they just tried to salvage whatever was left of their culture. That's what I think. I think it's definitely sunken landmass, global flooding, whatever. I think there was a culture there, Stephen, and they got wiped, man. They set up camp again.
We're getting into the territory of the big biblical flood theory.
Yeah, funny enough, I've got a show coming up on that, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and on Wednesday, but with another Rick Hidalgo show. But we also have a sunken island off the coast of Ireland, off Cork, not too far from where you are, my friend. 100 miles. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's called Porcupine Bank.
Yeah.
And it's on maps, it exists on maps. So bizarre, yes, you can get straight lines in nature, but not in grid-like patterns, Stephen. Not in grid-like patterns. And then there is other stuff in the area, like the newly found pyramid. So I don't think a lot of credence was given to that grid-like city pattern in the Azores Plateau. And I went, yeah, it's an anomaly, it's cute, let's have a look at it, let's goof off it, and then put it to bed. We've done it now. The region now is looking very, very exciting, Steve. Very, very exciting.
What I do find interesting is the west of Cork, especially Glengarriff Island, which is down near Bantry. Yeah. It has a microclimate from the Gulf Stream.
Yes.
and there's tropical plants growing in Southern Ireland that shouldn't be in that actual region.
Yeah, and Cornwall's like that too, isn't it? Because I lived in Cornwall, and the same. And the silly oils as well. The silly oils are like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually seen tropical plants growing in people's gardens, palm trees and things like that, in Glengarry. And it's well known for its microclimate. But what I do find interesting as well is you get a lot of killer whales that come up into that area to feed off of the seals.
Wow. Awesome, dude. Awesome. You know, so I'm going to roll out some links into the YouTube description here, Steve. The geological evidence of the landslide. We have the actual footage that people can watch. It's in Portuguese or Spanish, I'm not too sure. But it gives you the depth and it shows you the sonar image on the video clip. And, you know, you've got pyramids and mummies in the area as well, like synonymous with pyramid building in ancient Egypt. And the megalithic builders that I write about, Steve, they were known to have come from the Western Seas, that the Celts, who are about 1500 BC to 1000 BC, inherited the monuments, the megalithic monuments from the Tuatha De Danann. And they talked about the Tuatha De Danann, who were declining at the time. They were on their way out. The Celts were moving in. The Celts didn't originally come from Ireland. They came from the east and marched along the Danube till they got to Britain and Ireland and Brittany. And they met these megalithic builders, and they recorded them in their mythological tales, and they said that they came from the Western Seas, Stephen. That's what Tuatha De Danann means, other race of people from the Western Seas, basically. And these Tuatha De Danann were knowledgeable. They had megaliths. They were, you know, funny enough, they also pop up in Sligo Bay. The biggest concentration of megaliths in the country is in Sligo Bay. There's something like 5,000 archaeological sites just around Sligo alone. And in the Gulf of Morabhan in Brittany. Both of them facing out to the Western Atlantic. Natural landing bays should you come from the Western Seas. Like, you know, two little megalithic theme parks, megalithic hotspots. The mind only boggles that there was a sunken landmass. I mean, it's not a big reach of the imagination now, Stephen, with this pyramid now.
No, I honestly think that in the very near future, a lot of human history is going to have to be seriously rewritten.
I mean, how much more evidence do they want to start rewriting some of it? You know, they're leaving it to alternative history authors to address it, and I think it'll get into pop culture before they rewrite it. You know?
Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to talk about in maybe another little quick call. Is the hieroglyphs that were found in a tomb in Ireland.
Really?
Yes. Egyptian hieroglyphs found in an Irish tomb.
Yeah, well, I've got to check that out, Steve. That's another one. That's another show in itself. It's something I've researched. I mean, you got some glyphs that are similar with the Dogon, and that the similar glyphs like to the Egyptian, the triple water wave, that's one that the Egyptians used as well. So, fascinating. You know, that's another binding thing. I think that the Egyptians, the megalith builders, and the Dogon, they all had a common source. All these people had a common source, Stephen, at one point. And it's sunken land masses like this that binds it all together. I mean, there's biblical flood stories all around the world. You know, they came from the seas, or they came from the east, or they came from the west out into the ocean. Like, and, you know, they just seem to... But if you were to rekindle your civilization again, Steve, would you do it identically the exact same? You would try to, but, like, I mean, it depends on who survived. Did you have artisans, or did you have the builders, or did you have the astronomers, or did you have the architects, or did you have the storytellers, you know? Unless you had one of everything and everybody had a mandate to set the civilization up again. But if this happened because of a cataclysm, it would be a frenzied scramble for land, yeah? And then everybody would set it up in much the same similar way, but, like, you know, there'd be anomalies in each one, and I think there's definitely common sources for all this, Steve. I guess we'll wrap it up with that, Steve, and we'll talk to you again soon, my friend.
Alright, thanks for having me on, James.
No worries, Steve. Man, wow, an underwater pyramid found in the Azores. What a monster find this is, Steve.
Well, it's not the first one they found on the ocean floor, that's for a fact.
Yeah, I mean, we have this Cuban pyramid, and again, the research seems to have gone very, very silent on that, but this is a real little hot toddy, this one. I mean, when you go, I'll provide the links in the YouTube description for everybody to check this out, obviously, and, you know, when you look at the sonar imaging of this, it's very, very clear. Undoubtedly, this is a pyramid. You can see the steps on it. You can see the base. Let's just say, I mean, they've discovered this. It's an underwater pyramid, guaranteed. It's 60 meters high. That's some, 200 feet high. And it's got an 8,000 meter square base. It's a monster pyramid, Steve. It's a big one.
So 8 kilometres is 5 miles.
Yeah, so 5 square mile base, like. That's a big pyramid. And, you know, the thing is, we have now got other stuff in the Azores Plateau, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But when we have this pyramid now, we have the Cuban pyramid as well, which, by the way, is so far down, it has to be subsidence that put it down there. It wasn't literally that the sea levels were lower. So something's very happened in our past. I mean, actually, I know that I recall, Steve, there was a underwater sunken circle off the coast of the Orkneys as well. That's something like 15 meters down. So, Steve, that's a big
pyramid.
city's
smaller than that.
Here's the thing, like, you know, I mean, you know, to discuss this now, but you know, this is serious, like, you know, this is now starting to really cast doubt into our past of what really went on. I mean, again, do we say the word Atlantis? Like, you know, they ridicule the idea of Atlantis. You know, Ignatius Donnelly was the first one to reignite the research into Atlantis in the late 1800s.